everyone. Let's try to understand one important concept now. A word called fraud. Everybody must have been knowing that word. But now what we should understand, the word called fraud, now it is defined under the provisions of Companies Act 2013. You will be surprising to know the word fraud is not defined even in a criminal legislations, even Indian Penal Code or Criminal Procedure Code. In fact, Criminal Procedure Code is not defining it, and Indian Penal Code defines only fraudulent activities, and the Indian Contract Act defines fraudulent contract. So none of the legislation, including criminal legislation, attempted to define what is fraud. But Ministry of Corporate Affairs, they ensured, because when the time when the Companies Act 2013 got introduced, when they were in a drafting stage, so there were so many scams that was popping out in our country. Okay, so seeing all those, seeing the situation, the climate in our was the time when the 2013 Act was about to come into force. So government felt that it's the right time where let's try to plug the loopholes by bringing a clear-cut definition for fraud. The word fraud, the definition fraud, has been defined very detailed way under section 447, and the punishment for fraud is given under section 448. If you see the fraud definition, it starts with any act, any omission, commission done by any person against any other person with the intent to deceive and defraud. So, and with the convenience to defraud the stakeholders or creditors of the company or shareholders of the company. So it goes in a wider manner whereby any act or commission or omission done by any person of the company. It is not by the director, omission by director or any act by director. It is by any person by the company against any other person of the company. So here the only one point which gives a narrow understanding is that, perception is that any act with reference to company, So it should be reference to the company affairs. So as long as it is related to any act, omission, commission related to company affairs, it is not giving responsibility only to a director or KMP, key manager person of the company, but it's very open definition where it exposes any person or commission omission done by any person against any other person with intent to defraud. So the language, if you see, it is very wide, and more importantly, understanding the fraud. The punishment for fraud is given under section 448. So which says the minimum punishment is 6 months and maximum is 10 years. Here the very important aspect that we have to see here. The important aspect is that section 468 of Criminal Procedure Code, where it gives a limitation where if the offence is committed, which is punishable with a fine, then it can be tried up to 6 months. And offence punishable with 1 year can be tried within 1 year. Offence punishable within 3 years can be tried within 3 years. Therefore, there was a limitation was in place earlier because 1956 Act there was hardly any provision. Very few provision which carries imprisonment of 2 years and above. So all the provisions of the Companies Act right from 656 section was done the earlier Act 1956 comparing to the 470 sections of the Act 2013. So very few sections. But today if you see the fraud, probably in my next deliberation I will give more detail about what are the sections are covered and falling within that. But now my focus is to understand what the fraud and how it can really should be looked into by the corporate and entrepreneur and professional to understand the seriousness that the government wanted to really to give for us to understand. Okay. Now the punishment in 448 is 10 years. Therefore, if any person found guilty of fraud under section 447, then they are exposed to imprisonment of 10 years, and in which case, since the imprisonment period goes beyond 3 years, so the protection of limitation under Criminal Procedure Code which is given under section 468 is lifted. Therefore, a person even on commission of an offence, if he found guilty after 10 years or 20 years later also can be punished, because today, since the punishment period is increased, the person who is committing the offense will be exposed to any number of years. That means during the lifetime, because the limitation will not protect the person who is committing the offense. Therefore, as a professional or as an entrepreneur, it is very important to understand that anything is done is not ending up with committing fraud or defrauding the stakeholders of the company. So I'll see you with the next update. Thank you all for the patient hearing.